Hopefully you'll never need this information, but if you do end up in prison sometime in the future, this video might be useful. I'm your host Yusuf, and these are the top 10 scary things no one tells you about prison. Make sure to subscribe and ring that bell to get notified whenever we upload a new video. Anyways, let's get going. Number 10, the food. The food served at prisons is most known for being worse than a school cafeteria. The conditions at many institutions in the United States are being accused of starving their inmates with portions that are not even enough to fill a 5-year-old child, according to an inmate. Records have shown that the food not only tastes terrible, but has on one occasion caused an inmate to lose 90 pounds in less than 6 months due to the small portions. Here's what the average meal includes at Georgia Gordon County Jail. For breakfast, half a cup of canned fruit, half a cup of fruit juice, optional coffee, 1 cup of cold cereal, and 1 cup of 2% milk, 3 servings of margarine, 1 biscuit, and 1.5 cups of country gravy. Sounds like a lot, right? Well, that's because the inmates are not served lunch and are fed 10 to 14 hours apart. Number 9, the importance of money. You know how the saying goes, money rules the world. In prison, anything you want to do that involves the outside world requires a stack of cash. In prison, the average price monthly to keep in touch with the outside world is $588. $588 buys you 300 phone minutes, the monthly limit, at 21 cents a minute for domestic long-distance calls, 2,700 monthly minutes of emailing, 5 monthly video visits, and the maximum monthly limit at commissary. One inmate had this to say: "My friend was my iron girl for $10 a month. She ironed my khaki uniform 5 days a week. That was her hustle. The day before commissary, she would show up at my cell door with a list. On a scrap of paper were $10 worth of commissary items, 2 bags of tortilla chips, a toothbrush, and a box of laundry soap for a month's work." Number 8, what commissary is. Commissary is a way for prisoners to still contribute to the economy while locked up. Yes, you heard that right. Inmates are basically forced to contribute to the economy by purchasing extremely marked up things while in prison just to sustain themselves. The items sold at commissary often vary from extra snacks like tortilla chips mentioned earlier, to toiletries like toilet paper, tissues. They even sell soap occasionally. The Texas prison system alone generated $100 million in revenue in 2009. There is also a limit placed on each inmate on how much money they are allowed to spend per month on commissary. Number 7, jobs in prison. Prison jobs are very common, most of them being derivatives from one main job, because some prisons require every prisoner to have a job, but not many jobs are available to start with. The occupations have been trickled down and changed. Take for instance a janitor. Seems straightforward, but it's anything but. Since everyone needs a job, janitors will have specific areas they must mop, from one end of the cell block to the middle. Then someone else goes from the middle to the other end. There are jobs for swatting flies, handing out cups during chow time, and even helping in the kitchen if you're lucky. Number 6, how many guards there really are. This one is more scary for the guards than the inmates. Most prisons are very overcrowded. This means that there is a huge disparity in the number of guards and inmates. Sometimes the ratio of guards to inmates is as crazy as only 1 guard to 100 inmates. This means that if things got out of hand, perhaps during a prison break, riot, or even just a fight, the guards could be overwhelmed, and this has happened before multiple times. Guards aren't invincible. Although the conditions in prison are very hard for prisoners, that doesn't mean they can't find a way to cause chaos. If a fight or a riot were to start, the entire prison could be engulfed in it, and the guards could be perhaps overwhelmed. Number 5. Speaking of riots, did you know that inmates prepare for riots? Contrary to popular belief, prison riots are well planned. One correctional officer said this about the topic: "Inmates train for riots. At yard time, you'll see a ton of them doing martial arts together. Sometimes they'll start a fight with 3 or 4 guys just to see what our response is. That way they're able to work up a counter for it. They figure out what our moves are, and then they practice their methods for beating us while we watch." You'd think we might be able to turn that right around and train to counter their new methods, but again, there's no money for training. Number 4, the mean guards actually don't last all that long. We've all heard of mean prison guards treating the inmates poorly. In every prison movie, there's that cliche of a correctional officer yelling at the inmates and being rude or disrespectful.
You address me as Mr. correctional officer.
One correctional officer actually shared his experience with one of these guards. We had one lieutenant come in and treat the inmates like dirt, calling them names and acting like the hard guards from the movies. What he didn't account for is how much time you have to spend alone with these guys. One day, he went to investigate a fight between two inmates, but it turned out to be a diversion. Two other inmates came up from behind and ambushed him. He was stabbed 61 times before he could signal the officer in the control room to open the door and let him in. He survived, but he's not exactly running marathons these days. As you can tell, the guards have to respect the prisoners, as they have a disadvantage with how many guards there are compared to inmates. Number 3. The inmates are always listening. One guard might spill his heart to another guard about his impending divorce without realizing that the prisoner working as a janitor in the next room is listening in. Then that dude sells the information to an inmate with a grudge, and boom, the whole prison knows Sergeant Peters couldn't satisfy his wife. You could spend 2 or 3 weeks working a day shift and then get shoved over to a graveyard shift at a moment's notice. It affects you. Exhaustion slows down your reflexes, and guys with slow reflexes don't do so great against well-rested dudes rushing them with knives. Well, the inmates know when our schedules change, and they take advantage of that too. Again, they're always watching, looking for a weakness. A correctional officer had that to say about the topic. Number 2, the boredom. Have you ever been put in timeout as a kid and had to look at a wall or something for like 5 minutes? I know I have, and I usually can't even wait for 5 minutes because of the boredom. Prison is like being on timeout, but it's for months or years on end. Prisoners often have very little to do inside, most of them occupying themselves with jobs if they can. If the prisoner has some free time, they'll probably be reading books, studying textbooks, writing poetry, and even painting. A lot of inmates become interested in the arts while inside, as it gives them a source of creative freedom and endless imagination. Number 1, prison ingenuity. Inmates locked up for a long time have to make do with what they have available to them. Inmates aren't allowed to indulge in certain beverages, so they make it themselves. There have been many reports over the years of prisoners creating some sort of prison wine called Pruno. Pruno is made in their toilets, where they ferment fruits to get a form of a certain chemical that makes people woozy. The prison wine isn't as strong as the real thing and has some side effects, like sometimes making inmates enraged and crazy. Inmates have also found ways to get tattoos while inside with makeshift tools and ink. Thanks for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you next time.